The prison bully scared everyone until a killer humiliated him in front of the entire prison. No one dared to meet his eyes. Staring at him was like signing your own death warrant. And in that prison, fear was the only form of survival. He ruled the corridor like a king in a kingdom of iron and silence, every step echoing the kind of respect that was really just terror wearing a mask. His name was Conrad Harker, but inside Santa Mariella Federal Penitentiary, nobody called him that. In there, he was simply known as the Bear. His chest was a roadmap of violence, tattoos, scars, and old wars, thick beard, eyes that never blinked. Conrad was the embodiment of the unwritten law behind those walls. You either bowed or vanished. When he walked past the line of inmates, the air itself seemed to tighten. Guards looked the other way. Prisoners stepped back. And when he showed up shirtless, his body carved with the history of every fight he'd survived, silence took over, like the whole place was paying its respects. For 5 years, the Bear ruled that hellhole. No new warden, no lockdown, no sudden transfer could shake his grip. He decided who ate, who got beaten, who made it through another day. His danger wasn't just brute strength. It was the cold logic behind it. The man knew how to manipulate, how to dance on the thin line between chaos and control. Then came that suffocating Tuesday in July. The main gate clanked open, and a new inmate stepped through, handcuffed, flanked by 2 armed guards, calm as a man walking into a church. Most arrived shaking, he didn't. He looked around with the quiet focus of someone measuring every inch of space. No arrogance, no fear, just calculation. They locked him in cell 14, the one that had been empty since the incident no one dared mention. His file was paper thin. Inmate 0884, triple homicide, maximum risk. No family listed, no interrogation record, just silence. The rumors spread in minutes. 3 bodies, no witnesses, not a single sound. They said he killed like a surgeon, precise, methodical, cold. Conrad watched him from a distance, didn't ask questions, didn't speak. But he felt it, that shift in the air, that quiet kind of threat. The newcomer didn't bow, didn't look down, didn't ask permission. He just moved, like a man studying a chessboard no one else could see. And on his first day, the guy did the unthinkable. He sat at the Bear's table. The cafeteria froze. Conversations died mid-sentence. Metal trays stopped clattering. Conrad walked the length of the room, each step sounding like a hammer strike. He stopped in front of the table, staring down the newcomer for what felt like forever. The guy just kept eating, never said a word. Then Conrad turned around and walked away. The whole block went silent. Conrad never walked away from a challenge, but this time he did. And that silence meant something bigger was coming. The next morning, 2 of Conrad's men decided to handle things themselves. They cornered the new guy in the yard, a shove to the back, a low warning, "In here you learn, or you bleed." No answer, just movement. 10 seconds later, one screamed, shoulder dislocated. The other went down, knee twisted in a way nature never intended. No punches, no yelling, just precision. The guards showed up late, too late. There was no fight, no witnesses, only the hush of people who'd seen something they couldn't explain. Words spread like wildfire. The Bear felt it, the shift, the crack in his empire. For the first time, someone had challenged his authority without uttering a single word. By day 5, the entire prison was waiting for it. The showdown, the cafeteria packed, guards pretending to patrol, but everyone watching. Conrad walked in, shirtless, flanked by his loyal men. The new guy sat there again, eating slow, calm, unbothered. Conrad stopped in front of him, voice booming through the corridor. "You're sitting in my seat." The newcomer rose, slow and steady, adjusted his cuffs and met his gaze. No fear, no challenge, just that same surgical calm. What happened next lasted 4 seconds. A shoulder shift, a wrist twist, a hard fall. The Bear hit the floor. The sound of his body against concrete echoed through the metal walls, blood on his lip. absolute silence. He tried to get up, but the newcomer just stepped back, set his tray back on the table, and sat down again. Nobody moved. Not a single word. Even the guards stood frozen. In that moment, everyone understood. The reign was over. No yelling, no threats, no spectacle, just one precise final act. From that day on, Santa Mariella was never the same. The man everyone feared had fallen, brought down by someone who hadn't even spoken his name. And the most unsettling part, nobody yet knew who the new inmate really was. He didn't talk to anyone. In the days after Conrad's fall, the man from cell 14 became a ghost. Eyes followed him wherever he went, but no one dared to hold his gaze for more than a heartbeat. There was something off about his silence. Not the usual kind inmates used to stay out of trouble, but the kind that felt calculated, like a predator watching before he strikes. Some said he'd served in special forces. Others swore he used to be a contract killer. His file stayed sealed tight, and the guards spent more time watching him than trying to control him. It was like they were waiting for him to slip up, but he never did. Everything he did was exact, surgical. Up at 5, cell spotless, walks the yard in straight lines, same time every day, read the same 3 books he'd rescued from the storage room. No provocation, no reaction. He looked calm, too calm, the kind of calm that comes right before a storm. His name surfaced by accident through a quiet exchange between 2 guards. Miller Vasquez. Born in Ensenada, raised on both sides of the border. No father, mother dead when he was 12. By 16, he was already on the federal radar for ties to paramilitary groups. But they never caught him. He'd vanish before they could. Always clean, no traces. Rumor had it he once dismembered a body in 7 minutes. No blood, no mess. The whispers grew when a guard claimed he'd seen something in the database. Vasquez had been part of a black ops interrogation unit, the kind the government denies exists. He was discharged after an incident that never made it into the files. Then he disappeared for 2 years until 3 men turned up dead in a Guadalajara apartment, 2 gangsters and an ex-cop. Internal bleeding, no visible wounds. The prosecutor sealed the case. The media never got the story. But inside the system, the message was clear. Vasquez wasn't a criminal. He was a weapon that slipped its leash. Conrad, meanwhile, felt power slipping through his fingers. The respect was still there, but now it carried something else. The fear that he'd try something again and fail. He spent more time locked away, quiet, while his old crew started looking at him like he was just another inmate. A mistake, a reminder that even monsters fall. But Conrad wasn't the kind of man to fade quietly. 3 weeks after his fall, chaos nearly erupted. 1 inmate from Block F vanished after a run-in with Vasquez in the yard. No noise, no blood, just an empty bunk the next morning. The administration called it an emergency transfer. No one believed it. The cell was scrubbed twice, lock replaced. Vasquez? Same routine, same calm, like nothing happened. Even the guards could feel it. That man wasn't a prisoner. He was an execution protocol waiting for a command. A soldier who'd walked through hell and come back with empty hands. Conrad, now bruised in pride and reputation, began to plan. He knew he couldn't take Vasquez head-on. Strength wouldn't work. Noise wouldn't work. He'd have to go back to what made him dangerous in the first place, strategy. He rebuilt alliances, bought off 2 guards, started spreading whispers that Vasquez wasn't invincible, that he had a past, a weakness. The plan was simple. Break the silence. Force Miller to feel something as anger, guilt, fear, anything. Then hit him where no one else could, in the mind. The first move was a pawn, a new inmate, cocky kid named Tico. For 3 straight days, Tico pushed him, mocked his dead mother, called him a failed government experiment, threw food at him in the cafeteria. On the 3rd day, Tico vanished. But this time, it wasn't just the silence he left behind. On his bunk, carved into the wood with a blade tip, was a single message: "You see me, but you don't read me." Conrad got the message. It wasn't a warning, it was a signature, a quiet way of saying, "I see everything, and you're still playing the wrong game." In Block D, tension turned electric. Every day felt like someone's last. Power, once centralized, had fractured into paranoia. A minefield with two men at the center, one who ruled by fear and another who ruled by presence. But Conrad hadn't given up. He knew Vasquez could bleed. Everyone could. And to bring down a silent predator, sometimes all it takes is a whisper in the right ear. The next move wouldn't be brute force. It would be worse. Revenge. The halls of Santa Mariela began to smell different. Not just sweat and concrete, but dread. The air itself seemed to breathe carefully, as if the whole place was waiting for something to blow. Guards were tense. Inmates whispered. The warden pretended to have control, while quietly calling for reinforcements. Everyone knew a war was coming, not one of fists or knives, but of invisible moves and perfect timing. Conrad Harker, once the unchallenged monster of the prison, now moved through the shadows like a wounded animal trying to reclaim his den. He didn't just want payback, he wanted humiliation. He wanted to erase the sound of his body hitting the ground that day, the metallic echo, the taste of blood, the look in everyone's eyes when fear turned into doubt. That had to disappear. His plan spread through the cracks. The blind spots in the cameras, the guards who owed him favors, the inmates who'd sell their loyalty for an extra meal or a cigarette. But Miller Vasquez was a problem. No allies, no deals, no trades. He didn't play the game. He rewrote it just by existing. And that left Conrad with no obvious weapon until a name surfaced: Domenico Avila. They called him El Pastor, a cartel leader turned prisoner, known for manipulating men like a preacher at the pulpit. Cold, sharp, respected in every block. Unlike Conrad, El Pastor didn't rule with fear. He ruled with promises, protection, power, favors. He could win loyalty with words alone. Conrad knew if he wanted a real shot at taking down Vasquez, he'd need El Pastor by his side. They met one quiet night in the cafeteria after the last patrol. No threats, no bluffing. Just two predators making eye contact. And an unspoken deal. "You want him dead?" "No. I want him broken." "Then we start with what he hides." No one knew what that meant, but El Pastor had connections. 2 days later, a lawyer brought him an envelope. Inside, an old photograph. A woman and a boy smiling. No names, no notes. When Conrad saw it, he knew. He finally had a weapon. For the first time, Vasquez had a human weakness. The next phase started with whispers in the yard. "Think he still dreams about them?" They say he couldn't save his family. Men like him always carry blood they didn't spill. Vasquez didn't react, but he listened. His eyes lingered on conversations he used to ignore. He moved slower, looked up more often, and at night, he stayed awake longer, staring at the ceiling. Conrad noticed. Then came the final move. The morning Miller's cell door opened early. On his pillow lay the same photo, now with a message scrawled in ink. "You can bury the past, but it always comes back for dinner." Miller held the photo for a long moment. No expression. But that night, he didn't show up in the yard. For the first time, everyone thought he'd backed off. They were wrong. Vasquez never retreats. He watches. And in that drawn-out silence, the predator woke up. The 7th guard in 15 days asked to be moved off Block D. Official reason, psychological stress. Unofficial, someone's gonna die there and I don't want to be around. Corridors had never felt tenser. What started as a clash between two men had swelled into something bigger. like the whole system had been dragged onto an invisible chessboard where pieces started moving on their own. With every new move, someone disappeared, someone shut up, someone betrayed someone else. Cell 14, Miller Vasquez's cell, became a no-go zone. Even the bravest avoided that hallway. He kept the same untouchable routine. Up early, read, walk the yard, come back. But there was a new thing in his eyes, a tiny crack. Something only real predators noticed. Conrad Harker noticed it too. He didn't smile. He felt it. The man was starting to bleed from the inside. El Pastor saw it as well. But unlike Harker, he didn't underestimate Vasquez. "He's about to react," he whispered during a covert meeting with Conrad in the supply closet. "The question isn't when, it's how." Conrad shrugged it off. He thought victory was so close it couldn't fail. "When he breaks, he'll implode. I just need to force the last breath." That overconfidence began to tip the balance. In Block B, a prisoner named Dorian, one of Conrad's informants, showed up with his face torn apart. No one saw it. No camera caught it. He was found with a note shoved in his mouth, black ink on skin. "What you take for gain returns in pain." 2 days later, one of the guards Conrad had bought off was caught with 12,000 pesos hidden in the emergency box at the security post. He was sent to solitary with no chance of coming back. Apparently no one had snitched on him, but someone knew exactly where to look. El Pastor pulled away. "He's closing in on us, Conrad. You're acting like this is a show of force." That's what he wants us to think. Deep down, he's just another man hiding fear. You don't get it. He doesn't want to hide the fear. He wants you to think he feels something. The next night, Block D's power cut out for 47 seconds. Just 47. Long enough for Conrad's cell to be opened without leaving a trace. When the lights came back, nothing obvious was missing. No sign of forced entry. No visible threat. Except one thing. The handmade blade Conrad stashed under his bed was now embedded in the wall, right above his head. Beside it, sketched in charcoal, was the silhouette of a bear, lying down. The message was clear. "I could kill you while you sleep, but I chose to wait." Even Conrad's allies began pulling back. Something had broken beyond their control. Vasquez didn't just want to defend himself. He was repositioning fear, redefining what power meant in that place, not with brute force, with total presence. When El Pastor learned the woman and boy in the photo were named Lina and Andres Vasquez, he didn't take the info to Conrad. He burned the paper. He knew touching that would cross a line. "You won when he bled. Push further and you'll wake something we can't contain." But Conrad didn't stop. He went too deep. He messed with things he didn't understand. And Santa Mariela began counting days. Day 48 dawned like any other. Hot sun, dry air, shuffled footsteps in the halls. But anyone who really lives a prison knows danger doesn't announce itself. At 10 a.m., the warden was called urgently to the control room. A strange alert had tripped the internal system, a weird attempt to access the records network from an internal terminal in the prison library. The camera showed only one inmate sitting with a book open, completely still. Miller Vasquez. The IT tech couldn't explain it. The library network was air-gapped, no connection to the prison's main system. No active devices. Yet the prisoner's name had popped up across 3 confidential security levels tied to covert federal operations. The warden quietly ordered the notification logs wiped. He ordered the external guard on cell 14 suspended. He ordered just one person called, Lieutenant Mariela Portes, ex-military intelligence, now on the penitentiary's internal affairs, the woman who, 10 years earlier, had recruited Miller Vasquez for an operation the government never admitted existed. Mariela arrived in under 2 hours. She walked in without uniform, without ID, passed scanners and screening, and went straight to Block D. When she stopped at cell 14, Miller was already standing. "Knew you'd come," he said. "I didn't come to save you," she replied. "I didn't ask you to." What happened next wasn't caught on camera or audio, but rumors spread faster than anyone expected. Even without proof, everyone knew what had gone down. Mariella wasn't there to interrogate. She was there to give an explicit order: "You're cleared to finish what you started." And just like that, the game changed. Vasquez wasn't just a prisoner, he was a live trigger. The quiet war with Conrad, which, until then, looked like a fight between hardened men, revealed another layer. Vasquez had been planted for a purpose, and that purpose had just been reactivated. That same day, 3 men tied to Conrad were quietly transferred. A guard vanished from the night shift. By morning, the leader of one of the gangs in Block F was found out cold in the infirmary, every tooth broken. No camera footage, no witnesses, but on the wall beside his bed, scrawled in blood, "The countdown has started." Conrad understood. His time was running out, but he still had one last card, one El Pastor didn't even know existed. A card from outside the walls, someone who owed him more than freedom. The son of a minister who still carried the weight of an old debt. And that's when the idea surfaced. Not to kill Vasquez, to take him off the board, force him out, expose his identity, leak the full file, blow open the past the government had hidden, turn Miller into a national scandal. What Conrad didn't know was that the whole thing was already part of the plan. Because Miller Vasquez wasn't in that cell to survive. He was there to clean up something the state no longer could control. And the first name on the list was Conrad Harker. In the halls of Santa Mariella, silence had changed its sound. It was no longer the silence of fear. It was the silence of expectation, that uneasy pause before the thunder, when the sky itself seems to hold its breath. Ever since Mariela Portez's unrecorded visit to cell 14, nothing had felt the same. Inmates began to notice things they used to ignore. Guards replaced by strangers with no name tags, cells searched without warning, night patrols carried out by men who spoke to no one. Even the warden, once the image of control, now walked the corridors with his head down, glancing over his shoulder every few steps. But Miller Vasquez stayed the same. Up early, walked the yard, read. Except now, every step seemed watched, every breath measured. Conrad Harker could feel it. The air had shifted. His allies, once loyal, now hesitated before answering his calls. Even El Pastor kept his distance, watching from afar, like a man observing a ship that's already sinking. "He's not just a problem anymore," El Pastor murmured. "He is the system." Word of Vasquez's secret past was spreading through the prison, but nobody knew the truth. Some said he was ex-military, others whispered he was an undercover agent. A few believed he'd never truly belonged there at all, but the most common rumor was the one no one dared test, that anyone who tried to uncover his story ended up silenced by it. Then one of Conrad's bridges collapsed. His last trusted man, Baltazar, was found in the kitchen, throat slit, no cameras nearby. On the floor lay a single folded note, spotless, with one clean word written in neat handwriting: lied. Conrad didn't need an explanation. It wasn't a message, it was a verdict, and the executioner had judged on his own. But instead of backing down, Conrad doubled down. He called for someone from the outside, a name even El Pastor feared: Reyes Morano, a ghost from a dismantled faction, a torture specialist known for breaking any man for the right price. 22 years on paper, but freedom to move across 4 prison blocks. The kind of weapon you use once, then bury. The plan was simple. Don't kill Vasquez. Dismantle him from the inside. Crack the control he had over his body, his mind, his silence. Slow down his precision. In the yard, Reyes approached casually. A comment here, a shoulder tap there. Nothing direct, just friction. By day 3, Vasquez stopped walking. He stood still for 43 minutes. By day 4, he returned to his cell early, skipped dinner, and never showed up at the library. Everyone knew something was happening, but what nobody noticed was the other side of the board. While Conrad moved by instinct and Reyes played his part, the system itself began to unravel. 2 intelligence agents arrived with warrants for the warden's arrest and seized every transfer record from the past 6 months. 3 admin workers vanished, segments of the digital database were erased, and another cell was found open with no explanation. Vasquez was reconfiguring the environment. He wasn't just reacting, he was clearing the field. Santa Mariela was no longer a prison. It was a silent elimination zone, and Miller Vasquez was the final instrument. By the end of that month, 11 inmates had disappeared. No reports, no statements, cells washed, names erased, clothes removed, and in cell 14 he remained sitting, silent, waiting for the right moment, because the next name on the list was still breathing. For the first time, the book in cell 14 stayed closed. Miller Vasquez, man of unbreakable rituals, sat for hours, eyes locked on the wall. No training, no reading, no movement. The silence that once carried presence now felt like absence. Something had shifted, and Conrad knew exactly what. The man Vasquez had faced during his last covert operation, the one who killed Lina and Andres, was still alive. The name surfaced in the papers Conrad had obtained through the minister's son he'd bribed. Drago Melendez, international arms trafficker, former government ally, officially killed in a border raid. Unofficially, transferred to Santa Mariela under a new identity. That was all Conrad needed. El Pastor tried to stop him, told him he was crossing the point of no return, that Vasquez was a line you never crossed if you wanted to come back alive. But Conrad didn't care about coming back. He wanted to watch Vasquez break. Then the rumor started, the man who killed his family is here. Vasquez heard it, let himself hear it. The first time, no reaction. The second, eyes closed. The third, he whispered something under his breath. No one understood. But it sounded like a name, not Drago. Lina. The next day, Vasquez went back to his routine. 1 hour of training, 27 minutes walking, 20 pages of a war strategy book. But something was different, a tightness in his jaw, a slight delay in his shoulder turn, tiny cracks. Conrad saw them and threw his lowest punch. By the third evening, Vasquez was summoned to the infirmary for a routine medical check. He walked in. Lights went out, and the voice that spoke wasn't the doctor's. "Got a good memory, soldier?" said a voice in the dark. "Because I remember every scream." Vasquez didn't answer, but something inside him stopped. A pause, milliseconds long, almost invisible. But for a man like him, it was eternity. Drago went on, "You still see her face at night, or the boys?" Vasquez closed his eyes, and for a fraction of a second, he faltered. What happened next was never logged. The infirmary was shut down for structural maintenance. Drago Melendez was never seen again. Only the doctor remained, found unconscious, wrist fractured, jaw broken. And inside cell 14, a new mark appeared on the wall, a knife-cut cluster, 7 vertical lines. An 8th in progress. The count was still running, but something even deeper had changed inside Vasquez. He began to breathe differently. The rage he'd buried now burned. The control that once came easy now demanded force. But instead of breaking, he rose. He rewrote the plan. Stopped reacting, started acting. He was no longer the silent agent waiting for the next move. He was the move. Anyone watching him could tell. He wasn't driven by hate. He was fueled by clarity. He'd realized the mission wasn't just about finishing the operation. It was about ending the war. And the next name on that list, Conrad Harker, Block D didn't sleep anymore. Inmates kept pretending to follow routine, but everyone knew something was coming. The smart ones asked for transfers. The brave ones stayed quiet, and the stupid ones were already dead. Miller Vasquez moved as he always did, precise, controlled, cold. But now, every step he took felt like it was pushing the ground closer to collapse. He didn't bother to hide anymore, didn't pretend to blend in. His eyes, once unreadable, now carried urgency. The list was almost complete. 2 names left. One of them, Conrad Harker. Meanwhile, Conrad did what he'd always done best, controlled from the shadows. He no longer trusted anyone inside the prison. His circle had shrunk to nothing. Old allies, dead, isolated or silent. All that was left was him, and one final attempt. He reached out to an old contact, Santos Diaz, a former cartel enforcer turned infiltrator in the prisoner transport system. The plan was simple: remove Vasquez before he got to Conrad. Not as an escape, but as an official extraction. A forged emergency transfer, signed and sealed through 3 levels of fake clearance. The operation was set. Wednesday, 03 a.m., Block D, Cell 14. But that night, something went wrong. When the officers entered the cell, they found only a mattress, neatly folded clothes, and a message scrawled on the wall in dried blood. Who leaves doesn't finish. Miller was gone. Within 6 minutes, the entire facility was locked down. Silent alarms triggered. Guards at the towers, no trace, no sound. But Vasquez was still inside. Moving through forgotten service tunnels, hidden maintenance shafts, passages only listed in the prison's original blueprints. Blueprints no one but top-level contractors were supposed to have. How did he know? No one could answer. At 0347, Block D's power flickered. At 0349, Conrad's cell door slid open. He was standing, waiting, bare-chested, holding a blade. "I knew it'd be tonight," he said, almost smiling. Vasquez didn't answer. He didn't need to. The war that had begun with stares, silence, and strategy had boiled down to this: 2 men in the dark, alone, at the edge of what they could endure. And this was only the prelude to the end. Inside the cell, the air was heavier than outside. Conrad Harker breathed deep, blade in hand, tattoos pulsing under sweat-soaked skin. He was a bull waiting for the ring. Across from him, Miller Vasquez, still unarmed but unshaken. "Gonna end like the others?" Conrad sneered, spinning the blade. "Another clean cut, no words?" Miller stepped forward. "No, you're different. You need to understand why." Conrad smirked. "I don't want to understand. I just want to erase you." He lunged. The blade sliced through the air. Vasquez shifted, letting the steel cut nothing but wind, countering with a sharp elbow to the gut. Conrad stumbled, but recovered fast, slashing again, this time catching Miller's shoulder. Blood ran. Miller didn't flinch. He just held his gaze. "You think you're the wolf," Miller said, voice calm, "but you've always been the poison." Conrad attacked again, faster, harder. Vasquez caught his wrist, twisted. The blade fell, a strike to the ribs, a kick behind the knee. Conrad dropped, gasping. "What are you, huh?" he rasped. "Some guilty assassin? A government orphan? What the hell are you?" Miller knelt down in front of him. "I'm the man the system built to erase mistakes like you." Then he drove the same blade, the one Conrad had kept hidden in the wall since the beginning, between his shoulder and neck. Not to kill, to disable. Conrad slumped sideways, bleeding but alive. "That's justice?" he spat, choking. "No," Miller said steady. "That's correction. Your time's up, and I still have one name left to cross." Conrad gave a broken laugh. "You're just like me after all, pretending there's a noble reason." Vasquez stood, walked to the door, and turned. "The difference is, I never needed anyone to fear me to know I'd already won." The lights came back, sirens blared, guards stormed the block. They found Harker, unconscious and bleeding, and Vasquez standing tall, covered in blood but calm, eyes fixed on the ceiling, body still as stone. He didn't resist, didn't run. He just looked at one of the officers and said quietly, "Mission accomplished." The official report read, "Corrective intervention successful, threat neutralized." Unit decommissioned. But down the halls of Santa Mariela, the real version traveled mouth to mouth. The king fell, and it took another monster to make him kneel. Conrad Harker was transferred to a maximum security psychiatric ward. He survived, but without the control that once defined him. The factions that had followed him collapsed. His name became a warning, not a threat. Don't be a Harker, you can fall too. El Pastor vanished on his own. A silent request for isolation was approved without question. He chose to fade away rather than become the next target of something he could no longer understand. The prison returned to routine, but it wasn't the same. After Vasquez, no new leaders rose. No one dared to play king again. His shadow still lived there even in his absence, because Miller Vasquez didn't stay. 3 days after the confrontation, he was removed quietly from the facility. No cuffs, no escort protocol, just 2 men in suits and a woman in dark glasses. The same one who'd entered weeks earlier disguised as a civilian. No record, no signature. Cell 14 was sealed shut. On the wall, one final mark remained. The 8th line completed. Mission accomplished. What happened to him afterward, no one ever knew. Some say he was sent back to the same unit that built him. Others believe he was erased the moment his mission was done. There are whispers he was spotted in another prison, undercover. And there are those who swear he never existed at all. But everyone agrees on one thing: there was never anyone like him again. A man who didn't need to shout, threaten, or dominate. He only had to exist. And everyone understood. Months later, in another penitentiary, a rookie sat at the wrong table. The most feared veteran rose to correct the mistake. But before he could act, he saw something in the newcomer's eyes. Silence, unflinching eyes, stillness. The veteran hesitated, then stepped back. On the cafeteria wall, faintly written in charcoal, almost erased, "You see me, but you don't read me." If this story kept you hooked from beginning to end, don't forget to leave a like, share it with someone who'd enjoy it, and comment below. What would you have done? Your opinion matters. It helps the channel grow. And if you're not subscribed yet, hit that button and ring the bell so you don't miss the next story. If you want more tension, more twists, more raw emotion, check out the other videos on the channel. Many powerful stories are waiting for you.